Beyond the headlines, the noise, the spin, we seek the stories that live within. Past party lines, past powers disguised, we hear the truth in everyday lives. A space for voices, both gentle and strong. Beyond politics, where we all belong.
Hi everyone, my name is Jin Qian from Ozarb Media. Today I'm delighted to be joined by David Moncrieff MP, the member for Hughes. Hughes is a federal electorate covering South and Southwestern Sydney. Some main suburbs include Bundeena, Como, Engadine, Heathcote, Menai, Moorebank, Sandy Point, Sutherland, Waterfall and Watergrove. It's an area characterised by friendly families, water views, bushland and even a large military base. There you go, you have everything, David.
We do. Thank you so much for having me, Jen.
Welcome, and congratulations on reaching that 1 year anniversary. Nearly there.
Just about.
Since winning Hughes.
Thank you.
First and foremost, we always like to know the person behind the role and behind any other title. And you have painted a picture for us in your inaugural speech of a family where both of your parents worked as school teachers, and it sounds like a happy, middle-class, stable family. Is this a fair description?
Yeah, I'd say so. I was very fortunate to be raised in a very loving and supporting family. As you said, my parents were teachers, so I was raised in an environment that really valued education, that really valued logic and reason, being both maths teachers, and really valued social justice as well. I was raised in the Catholic tradition, so very much community-minded and wanting to ensure that the members of the community who sometimes might be left behind by traditional institutions are looked after and made to feel part of the community.
Okay, let's delve a little bit deeper into that a bit later. Up front though, what's something that people often misunderstand about you?
Being the youngest member of the House of Representatives, people sort of imagine that I was a sort of student politics person. In reality, I joined the Labor Party as an adult, so I've always been very, very interested and involved in politics. But in terms of my involvement in the party, it's probably not always what people imagine.
That's very interesting, actually. That's very interesting. Okay, you grew up as a Sutherland Shire boy, let's say.
That's right. Yeah.
Then you studied economics, statistics, and mathematics. That's a mouthful in itself. And then you grew up obsessed over politics a little bit. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I was always really interested in the democratic process. I can remember going to Canberra as a kid and learning about preferential voting, and I'm a big fan of preferential voting. I've always been very grateful to live in a democracy where we can have the voices of the people heard and represented to our government. So politics played a very important role in the way that I looked at the world. And I've always really valued living in a democratic society where different voices are able to be voiced.
Well, that's something extraordinary about you up front, because we often associate mathematicians and economists as the practitioners and operators, whereas we associate politicians with having strong leadership, passionate, and being extroverted. You have the best of both worlds.
Thank you. No, I very much value those two sides. So, as I said, grew up in a mathematical household. I've studied economics and finance, mathematics and statistics. So I'm very aware of the responsibilities of government to rely on evidence and produce policies that are based on logic and reason that are going to be effective for the taxpayer and for the community, but also rely on community support to get up and running. So I really believe in a grassroots democratic system. We're very lucky with the Westminster system that we've got, that we are able to have significant representation for local communities to our federal government. I think there are times when that's not used to its most efficient extent, and I think Hughes is a seat that has been overlooked at times, and it's certainly something that I try to do my best to ensure that it's not overlooked.
Okay. You mentioned as well that you had a sustained interest in politics, and the 2010 federal election as having a important impact on you. As a young boy growing up, obsessed over politics and watching the election coverage on that night, what were you thinking?
I said I'd always had an interest in politics. I'd always followed it. But I suppose the 2010 election was a time when I started following it more sustainable, or I had more of a sustained interest in it. And I suppose partially because of the nature of hung parliament, it was a very interesting time in Australian politics, and very dynamic time. It was a time when we got a lot done as a Labor government. A lot of reforms were passed through by that parliament, despite the nature of a hung parliament that presented challenges legislatively. But a lot was done. A lot of historic reforms were gotten through, and it was a great time to start taking that more in-depth look at politics for a young person like I was then.
And now you're here you are.
That's right. That's right.
Before you got into politics as a federal member of parliament, you worked in the federal financial regulation space and worked as a political staffer. First of all, what was it like working in the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority?
Yeah, it was fantastic. I really value my time there, and I got to learn from a lot of really experienced people about how our financial system works and how we can best ensure that our financial system is working to the expectations of the Australian community. Essentially, I mean, I was primarily working in insurance supervision, so ensuring that the big insurance companies are fulfilling the community's expectations and the obligations that are provided to it, but also working with them and trying to improve their business practices to ensure that they're getting the best value out of their business, but and while also meeting the needs of the community as well. Yeah, and I think I'm now serving on the Corporations and Financial Services Committee, so it's been a very useful experience that I've been able to draw upon in some of that work. We're currently doing an inquiry into small business insurance, so it's been really valuable to have a perspective from the other side of the table and to be able to see what it's like being in that regulatory space.
These are all definitely valuable and transferable skill sets that you bring. And of course, you then worked as a policy advisor to the state member for Heathcote, Marion Stewart MP.
That's right.
On a number of occasions, you have mentioned similarities between your ideal mathematical world and politics, budgeting, policy aspects, logical and all those methodical aspects. But what are the differences?
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly differences between working in the public sector in the public service and working in the political space. I suppose the primary difference, is that forward-facing customer service-like role where you are very much looking at the needs of the community members as they present themselves rather than the community as a whole. In the public service, you can provide information based solely on data and information, whereas politics is a lot more human. As I said, in our representative democracy, it's very important that everybody's voice is heard, and sometimes there are, well-intentioned policies that see people slip through the cracks, and I see it as our role to try and ensure that those people aren't neglected, that they are looked after, and ensure that those people are able to see the benefits that we are trying to achieve for our society.
Okay, you mentioned people. Why don't we talk about people? You're famous for door knocking. Can I put it this way? Any fun or not fun door knocking stories?
Well, I think door knocking is an amazing resource for politicians. I think I learned so much from my community about what it values and what it's looking for from door knocking. I think, there are times when you get a bit surprised at what you see. So a classic example is, a lot of the time you knock on someone's door and they seem totally uninterested. They slam the door in your face. But there's been a few times where it's happened where, I've been door knocking in the area, and that's happened to me a few times, and then later on someone's come back to me, to come out of their house and say, look, I'm sorry, I actually do want to discuss things with you. And a lot of those conversations I've found are quite productive, because a lot of the times people initially aren't overly willing to engage with things, but once they've had a chance to digest these things, sometimes they are interested in having the conversation and sharing their perspective with their local representatives.
I remember the constituent you mentioned in your inaugural speech, who initially, about the roadworks and improvements to traffic, who initially had a mistrust either in government or any future possibility in making things happen because of her own advocacy. But you were able to achieve tangible results for her.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that was a really tangible, as you said, example for me of what good representation can look like. We've seen significant impacts to social cohesion from people losing faith in democratic systems and our institutions across society. I think it's our role as politicians to try and live up to the trust that's been placed in us, and to ensure that as much as possible we live up to the trust that's placed in us. And I think the example that you're referring to, that I spoke about in my first speech, was a great example of just having a go. I think, we didn't know if we were going to get a good outcome in that case, but all we can do as community leaders is do our best for our community, and sometimes we can get outcomes that make a real difference in our constituents' lives.
And that would have given you a sense of real satisfaction as well.
Absolutely. Sometimes, especially federal politics, it can be somewhat removed from people's day-to-day lives. But when you're able to get real outcomes for people, whether that's through pensions or things, or NDIS entitlements, these are the life-changing things for people that can make the difference between someone having a quality of life that is of a standard that you'd expect in a developed country like Australia, and not having the standard of life that people rightly expect in this country.
Let's look at the election. On being elected to Parliament, the Sydney Morning Herald called yourself and the member for Banks, S2E6 MP, Sydney's accidental MPs who seized Liberal seats when no one was looking. How did you have the motivation when things looked unwinnable?
Well, I certainly acknowledge that there was reporting characterising the seats as unwinnable. I never viewed it that way. These were the two most marginal Liberal seats in New South Wales. The margin for Hughes was 3.5%. I always viewed that as a winnable seat, and as someone who's lived in the community my whole life, I've certainly seen changes in the approach taken by the community, and I think the community was ready for a change. The message that we had to give in the election campaign, I think it was a worthy message, and I was content to be able to deliver that message, whatever the outcome was. But I always viewed the seat as being worth having a serious go at, and I always viewed our message as being one that was worth delivering regardless of the outcome.
What would you be doing if you had not won?
It's a good question. I don't know. I mean, there are certainly other opportunities that were available to me, but I'm very content and very honoured to have been successful in the election and to have been able to take on this role.
Now, it's been a year. Please share with us some of your achievements and the achievements of the Albanese Labor government.
So I think one of the big things that people have noticed a difference in is bulk billing. We've seen a significant rise in bulk billing across our community. So bulk billing had largely become an abnormality in our community. I'm very proud that we've now got 22 bulk billing services across our our electorate. That's making a real difference to people's cost of living pressures. We can sometimes deprioritise our own health when there's other pressures on our budgets and on our time. But when we're able to address these health issues early through our primary health care, it saves a lot of money for the society in the long term. So I'm very proud that we've been able to increase those bulk billing rates and get more GP services bulk billing. We've also seen some significant projects funded by the federal government, including Waratah Park in Sutherland, which has been a long time coming. It's an all-inclusive playground, incorporating some of the local matters. So we've got the representation of the Sutherland to Cronulla tramway, which existed in the 20th century, and inclusive play equipment for the people with disabilities as well, which has been such a fantastic addition to the Sutherland community. We've seen massive investments in ANSTO, the Australian Nuclear Science and Technology Organisation.
Yes.
So I've got the only nuclear reactor
Lucas Heights.
in Australia, in Lucas
Yeah.
Heights. They do some amazing work there through nuclear medicine and through their research. And having that investment into their infrastructure to ensure that they're able to continue doing that work is something that I'm very proud of. We've also got some significant upgrades to the M5. So between Moorebank Avenue and the Hume Highway, where we're funding an additional bridge across the Georges River and the railway line, to try and take pressure off that choke point as trucks are turning off off Moorebank Avenue. So there's some significant investment happening in our community to revitalise it, and I'm very proud that the Albanese government's playing an active role in it.
These are significant achievements touching on every aspect of community life. I've got a few policy favourites as well, but my favourite of the favourite recently is the government's crackdown on the removal of hidden transaction fees and subscription traps. That is, to say these things are annoying is an understatement, because it chips away your savings.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right, Jin. I think it's with cost of living pressures the way that they are, it's something that people want to be able to have faith that when they see a price that they are able to know that that's the price that they're going to pay. So those subscription tabs, they are significant cost burden on people, and I think the Albanese government's looking at a lot of ways that we can make our financial system better, and I think it goes to that social cohesion piece as well, that if people feel like these institutions are not meeting their needs or that aren't listening to their concerns, it does chip away at social cohesion. So we're very, very happy to be on board with these reforms and restoring faith in the system.
Yeah, it's a tangible cost of living relief for Australians.
Yeah.
Let's look at some challenges and opportunities. You have emphasised the importance of local campaigning. But frankly, there are hundreds of locals out there, hundreds of political staffers out there, and hundreds of policy professionals out there. Were there any other secret of success?
I think persistence is important. I think we were successful because, as you said, like even though a lot of the media's narrative was that the seat was unwinnable, I think it's important to. My grandfather used to always say, "Whatever you do, do it well." Right. So I think I think persistence is very important. Whatever you put your mind to, I think it's important to follow through.
That's good advice. That's good advice. On housing, you had to move home to save money and support your election campaign. What are your housing plans for yourself at the moment, and as well as for all the young people out there?
Well, I think it's a very common story in my generation. My generation is sometimes called the boomerang generation, that they're having to move home due to the cost of living pressures, the way that they are. The federal government's current federal government is playing a much more significant role than any federal government since the post-war period in restoring some of that housing equity through things like our 5% deposits, the Housing Australia Future Fund. These are making a real difference in the lives of so many young Australians who have felt for so long like the housing market has just been not for them. We are very aware of those concerns. And we are, as I said, we're playing a more active role in ensuring that that market is fairer and that playing field is more level than it has been in recent decades, and playing a more active role in that than any government for decades. So I'm very proud that that my generation and young people right across Australia are starting to see the benefits of that. And I'm looking forward to, as those programs progress, seeing more of the tangible outcomes of that and seeing that flow through to more people across Australia.
I don't know about you, but when I had to move home temporarily in my late 20s, I had a lot of fights with parents.
It certainly presents challenges, yeah. But as you say, it's not an uncommon story for young people. It used to be the case that as soon as you got a job, you'd move out and never see your parents again. The nature of the housing problem has meant that it is quite a common story, and it definitely presents family challenges at times.
Frankly, you are relatively young compared to a lot of other parliamentarians. But in politics, a lot of the decision making is still reliant on age, experience, and seniority. How do you navigate that?
Well, we're very fortunate to have a very diverse caucus in the Labor Party. We've got different ages, different ethnic and cultural backgrounds. We've got different genders. We're the first majority female caucus in the history of the federal government. We really value having different perspectives. As you said, I'm one of the youngest members of caucus. I'm the youngest member of the House of Representatives. We've got our first Gen Z senator in Senator Charlotte Walker, who turned 21 on election day.
Wow.
We really value those different perspectives. I think a lot of new MPs, regardless of age, I think there is a lot of there's always more to learn in terms of advocacy. But we're very lucky that our caucus is very open, very willing to be challenged on its thinking and interested in the perspectives of the very diverse nature of the modern Australia in 2026, which is represented quite well in our caucus.
And you have been doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
Was there any moment, though, when you realised public leadership would also come with a significant cost?
In terms of personal cost, I mean, there's always personal cost to anything that you do and any opportunity that you take. I think, this is certainly a job that takes up a lot of time, and that certainly detracts from family life and from social engagements. But I'm very honoured to be able to do it, and I very much value the honour that has been given to me in the role, and I don't spend much time focusing on the costs of what this role presents, but rather on the amazing opportunities that are presented to our community and how I can best advocate for them.
Looking ahead, what are your upcoming priorities for the rest of the year?
So, I'm focused on ensuring that we get the best outcomes for our community. We've got the budget coming up in May. I'm hoping that obviously it's a tough time for a lot of people across Australia. We're looking to ensure we've got a budget that meets the needs of the community in the current challenging circumstances that surround the international situation, but also is forward-looking and creates an economy that will be able to deal with economic shocks like this going forward. And I think that so for I'm really looking forward to the opportunities that this year will present.
Last but not least, in one word, what motivates you every day?
Service. Yeah, I very much view this role as being representative of the people, and I think, as I said, I'm very honoured to be able to represent my community in this role, and any service that I'm able to provide to them, I'm very honoured to be able to play a role in that.
On that note, we come to a wrap. Thank you, David, for your time today. We're lucky to have you, and Australia is lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you.
Once again, my name is Jin Qian from Oz Arab Media. Stay tuned to the next episode of Beyond Politics, and of course, stay tuned to Oz Arab Media.